GM foods are foods made from organisms that have been genetically engineered by humans to make changes in a plant or animal's DNA. Scientists do this in order to put new traits into the food we eat to make it more accessible, more affordable, and safer. The first GM food was sold in 1994, which means GM foods have been in your diet for your whole lifetime, even if you didn't know it. There have been no adverse effects seen from GM foods this whole time, so why are people against it? Anti-GMO activists claim that they are harmful to our environment and could cause adverse effects in the future. However, none of the adverse effects have been seen to date, and the GM foods do a lot more good than harm. When it comes to genetically modifying foods, high-demand cash crops are most affected because they are needed in large quantities to feed the growing population. For some countries, GM foods are the only option. Foods can be engineered for the climates of developing countries, making the food source more reliable and the farming industries in these countries stronger. For example, in Africa, a genetically modified cotton plant called BT cotton was introduced in 1997 among small-scale farmers. The modification makes the cotton insect resistant. The results were lower cost of production, less labor needed for spraying pesticides, and a higher gross margin of $50 United States dollars. Disposable income increased, and there were more time for the farmers to do non-cotton activities, improving their quality of life. In many places in the developing world, GM food allows more people to be fed and brings wealth to the communities that use them. Why should we be against GM foods, which have no evidence of adverse or harming effects when they are essential to feeding the growing population? In regards to the healthiness of GM foods, they actually are sometimes more healthy than non-GM foods because they can be made resistant to pathogens, so there is less need for pesticides, which can run off into lakes and streams and cause ecological disruption and pollution. GM foods help to increase crop production while not relying on harmful chemicals. For example, in Europe, genetically modified insect-protected corn has allowed farmers to reduce their use of insecticides to fight the corn rootworm and the European corn borer. They can engineer the corn by changing its DNA, which is much less harmful than using pesticides. GM foods are well regulated, safe, and beneficial. Growing them helps support the population, which is growing exponentially currently, especially in third world countries. They also help reduce pesticide pollution, support developing countries and economies, and improve quality of life for small farmers. With all these benefits, GM foods should be continued to be used and engineered, and we should support the scientists who engineer them.